In this video, I'm going to talk you through some different devices that artists use in terms of composition or what also might be called arrangement. And we're going to look at a variety of paintings, some of the most famous paintings from Western art over the last century or so, to see these different devices or approaches to composition in use. What I'd like you to do is listen to the video carefully, see if you can understand what I'm talking about, and most importantly, after this, see if you can see examples in other paintings. Because listening to this is an introduction, but the really important skill is being able to recognise these things yourself, and the more you look for them, the more you look at paintings and think about them, the more you'll see. And we're going to begin with one that you've heard me talk about before for sure, which is the use of horizontals and verticals. So an artist might use these in a piece of work more, and actually not use any diagonals at all, but organise a piece into horizontal and verticals to bring a sense of order to a piece of work, to make it feel controlled, and it can often as well take away any kind of dynamic feeling and bring a sense of stillness, a static feeling to the painting. Mondrian was a master of this, and in this example here you can see the entire painting is compartmentalised into these different areas using horizontals and verticals, and this brings a sense of order and calm. In this Klimt landscape, which is almost abstract, you can see there's a big horizontal at the back, and the trees make up lots and lots of verticals in front, but they're not completely vertical, so the slight suggestion of diagonals there brings a small amount of movement, almost the same amount of movement as winds blowing through the trees or a rustle of the leaves, which brings us to diagonals. And the use of diagonals brings a lot more dynamism to a painting, so a feeling of energy, a feeling of movement, and rather than the ordered feeling of horizontals and verticals, perhaps even a feeling of chaos. And here we've got a feeling of juddering, clattering movement into Duchamp's Nude descending the staircase, and we can feel the descending movement, and it's because of these repeated diagonal lines that are also intersecting, they're cutting through each other, and this is what is creating a sense of movement, a sense of dynamism or a dynamic feeling to the painting. There's some kind of energy being used in there. There's an Italian movement called Futurism, although this is a piece by a Russian painter called Malevich, and this is called The Knife Grinder, but it's in the futurist style, and where we see it's a bit similar to Cubism, but there's a real sense of movement, and again this movement is communicated because of these repeated and overlapping diagonal lines, and they also intersect each other. This idea that they're not all going at the same angle, but they're intersecting each other is very important. Framing is a very widely used device that helps focus our attention on a piece of subject matter, or more than one piece of subject matter in a painting that the artist wants to draw our attention to. In the example we have here, there are 3 pieces of subject matter which the artist wants to focus our attention on, and I think you can immediately tell what they are. There's a piece in the background, in the midground, and in the foreground, and by focusing our attention on each of these 3 pieces of subject matter, the artist also helps us recognise the feeling of depth and distance that's in the painting. In the very background of the painting, we have a temple, and that is framed by the back of this entranceway in blue. Also, the use of the colour blue helps us understand that it's receding and it's in the distance. The next piece of subject matter that the artist wants us to focus our attention on here is this chap in the middle of the painting and in the midground, and he is framed by the front side of that entranceway, as you can see here. There is also some negative space around him which helps bring our attention to him as well. And then down in the front we have the figure on the steps, who is framed by the bottom of the painting, the figure at the side, the left-hand edge of the painting, and the step that the orange figure is walking in front of. These 3 being organised in this diagonal line that leads us back into the painting from the figure in the foreground to the guy in the midground to the building at the back helps, again, create a sense of depth, and we've got this feeling that we could walk into the painting, and this makes the piece far more engaging and dramatic for us, makes us feel like we are part of that scene ourselves. Negative space, as you know, is the empty space in a picture, and the use of negative space can have a strong impact, especially if the artist uses a lot of negative space. A little bit like the horizontals and verticals, a lot of negative space can really slow a painting down because it gives us less things for our eye to be buzzing about. So here the emptiness behind the figure perhaps gives us a suggestion of what's going on with the figure or what's behind her, but this emptiness, this vastness, this void that's created with the empty dark space draws our attention to the figure, makes her feel a little bit more isolated, and this is emphasised by the receding lights, the two sets of lights, the two trails of lights receding into the background, and their reflection in the mirror, in the window, also helps us. It creates a sense of distance and again emphasises this void, this emptiness, and we think now this space isn't just a flat wall of black, but it goes off into the distance. An artist might also decide not to use much negative space at all, and as you would expect, that has the opposite effect. It creates a sense of clutter, chaos and busyness. So rather than the stillness in that Hopper painting that we just saw, we're going to see an example by John Bratby here. And it's a very, very different style of painting where we have clutter, we have busyness, we have a kind of sense of chaos in this table. This also reminds us of the use of intersecting lines because we see different lines going off at different angles to each other, and this also helps create this lack of order and a sense of chaos. But the lack of negative space is what makes it feel so busy, like there's so much happening in it. An artist's job is to make a painting interesting for somebody to look at, and so helping the viewer's eye move around the picture is something that the artist might do in their use of line and shape. And so this is a compositional device. We're going to see a piece by Paul Cézanne, very famous artist, for a number of reasons, but one of them being his mastery of composition. Here he has used the edges and the folds in the white fabric here to move our eye, and the edges of the objects themselves to move our eye around this painting and take us on a sort of looping, sweeping journey, making sure that our eye takes in everything in the painting. We don't just go immediately to one area. There's lots and lots of different focal points, and there's lots and lots of lines joining up our journey between things so that it creates quite a lively picture, and our eye never ever really stays still. It's always moving around and it's always enjoying the painting. I've created a little animation here to show you one of the possible routes that your eye might take through the painting, but this is by no means the only one. And it's worth having a look and seeing what other journeys the eye might take. Mine has started from left to right because that's the way we are used to reading images, but that's not to say that you might not come in from the right-hand side. This idea of controlling the way the eye moves through the painting or helping the eye move through a painting can also help build a story or relate pieces of subject matter to each other. So we're going to see a famous painting from a neoclassical painter called Jacques-Louis David, and this is called The Oath of the Horatii, and it's about three brothers that have been sent out to defend their city, and their father is sending them out to fight, and they are bravely going out to do that. And the painting is supposed to speak about their bravery and their valour and their virtue. And we can see the background. We've got these three arches that divide the painting into three sections and frame each of the three pieces of subject matter. And again, we start at the right-hand side, and our eye moves down the spear, up the arm of the guy holding the spear, and along the raised arms of the three brothers. And that takes us to the next area, to the father. And we stop almost at the swords. and then we follow his arm down, holding the swords up to his sons, and our eye travels along his arm, over his shoulder, down the back of his robe, and it takes us down to the wives of the brothers, who are very upset, not only because their husbands are going out to fight, but because it is their brothers that they are going out to fight as well. And, this shows us the victims, they're going to be victims in some way, because either their husbands or their brothers are going to die. But the painting is all about noble virtue, and we're meant to see these guys bravely going out to fight as the heroes of the story. However, this painting is hundreds of years old, and perhaps our values have changed since then. Viewpoint is a really important device an artist can play with in order to bring drama, and again to help create a narrative or build a story in a picture. And this is where the artist thinks of himself a bit more like a film director or a photographer sometimes. And the example of this we're going to see is by a very important American artist called Andrew Wyeth. And this painting is from about 70 years ago. But it could have been done very recently. It's so crisp and realistic. And our viewpoint of the subject, we're looking down at her, which places her in a position of vulnerability. Also, the high horizon at the back helps compound this. We should really, if we've got a high viewpoint, look down on a horizon, but the high horizon means that not only are we raised, but the background is raised in her, and she is almost at the bottom of this valley between us and the place where she is going to. So she is pretty much at the most vulnerable point she could possibly be painted, and we can't even see a way of her getting to where she intends to go. Or is she trying to escape from there, perhaps? This is a terrific example of viewpoint being used to create drama.